I make jokes about it, but I call it the cinema gods, and they mess with us. And the first thing that happens, usually, is the love scene.
I actually believe that you have a romantic relationship with every leading man you've ever starred with.
For decades, Diane Lane's name has been linked to some of the biggest scandals in Hollywood. Affairs with her leading men, secret on-set romances, and chemistry so real that fans never believed it was only acting.
I thought you'd want to stay clear of such doings for a while. See, that's natural.
My mother became the woman she had always wanted to be.
It's a tie-dye.
No one will buy these.
Maybe if they see you in one.
Husband's gonna hate it.
He's gonna love you in it. Look how sexy you are.
Now she is finally breaking her silence, and the truth is not what anyone expected. So which of these famous love stories actually happened, and which were pure invention? Join us as we uncover the truth about Diane Lane's scandalous affairs.
As a child of divorce, I had the experience of actually being fought over. My parents got divorced when I was incredibly young. They like to say 13 days old because, can you believe it? It was less than 2 weeks. They always planned on sharing me parental leave, but I never saw them as a couple. It was really tricky to live between two strong, passionate, interesting, fiery parents who are not united in any way.
Early life. Long before the red carpets and the rumors, Diane Lane's story began on a cold January morning in 1965 in New York City. Her parents could hardly have been more different. Her mother, Colleen, was a glamorous nightclub singer and former Playboy centerfold. Her father, Burton Eugene Lane, was an acting coach who drove a cab to pay the bills. Their romance was a whirlwind that burned out almost as quickly as it ignited. Just 2 weeks after Diane was born, the two separated. Colleen, looking for a fresh start, took the baby to Mexico and filed for divorce. For the next 6 years, Diane's world revolved around her mother's vibrant but unpredictable orbit. Then everything shifted. Her father won custody, and the two of them began a very different kind of life together. It was nomadic and often hard, drifting through New York City and moving from one rundown hotel to the next. Diane frequently rode along on her father's taxi routes, watching the city's gritty, colorful side roll past the window. It was an unusual childhood for a girl who would soon be hailed as the next great American beauty. But the instability of those early years was already steering her toward a reckless decision, one that would tear the family apart all over again.
That train scene, we were bringing the train back to the starting point. We were done with our filming day. There was nothing left to film. And it's just me and the crew and Adrian and the camera. And he said, well, we might as well roll. What do you got?
Wow.
Can you believe it? Yeah. And I said, you're gonna let me have just one take? I was so
Independence too soon. By the time she was 15, Diane was hungry for freedom, and she took it. Defying her father, she boarded a plane to Los Angeles with her friend, the actor Christopher Atkins, for a week of pure adventure. Looking back, she described it as exactly the kind of thing that happens when a young person is handed too much independence too soon. When she returned to New York, she moved in with a friend's family, renting a room to support herself, and enrolled in high school in 1981 after finishing her earlier studies through correspondence courses. But the hardest twist was still to come. Determined to pull her daughter back into her life, Diane's mother took drastic action and effectively kidnapped her, taking her to Georgia. Diane and her father fought back through the courts, and after 6 tense weeks, they were finally reunited. The ordeal left a lasting scar. For 3 years afterward, Diane had no contact with her mother at all. Time eventually softened the wound, and the two slowly found their way back to each other. Yet even as her family was being torn apart and stitched back together, another part of her life was quietly catching fire. So where did a girl with such a turbulent childhood first learn to command an audience?
At home, and it's a very erotic scene, and
Well, it's not. That's very funny because sex on the train? There is no sex on the train.
there isn't. No, it's not. No, but you're
not
thinking
erotic.
about it's no. Well, it's well.
Where are we going?
I don't know. I
Where are
just
we
thought it'd be an
going?
amazing Metro North.
Career beginnings and breakthrough. If Diane's home life was chaotic, the stage was where everything finally made sense. Her love of performance traced back to her grandmother, Ella Scott, a Pentecostal preacher known for sermons that could hold an entire room spellbound. Watching her grandmother command a crowd lit something inside Diane. At just 6 years old, she took her first steps on stage at New York's La Mama Experimental Theater Club. By 12, she was performing in Joseph Papp's production of The Cherry Orchard, sharing the stage with legends including Meryl Streep. Even as the acting work piled up, Diane stayed committed to her education, enrolling in an accelerated program at Hunter College High School. Then, at 13, she faced a decision that would set the entire course of her life. She could take a Broadway role, or she could gamble on a movie. She chose film, starring opposite Laurence Olivier in A Little Romance. The gamble paid off in spectacular fashion. Olivier himself called her the new Grace Kelly. Soon, she was on the cover of Time magazine, and Hollywood was buzzing about a teenager it had already decided was destined for stardom. But being crowned the new Grace Kelly at 13 was a heavy burden to hand a child. Could she actually live up to it? The new Grace Kelly. That comparison to Grace Kelly was a heavy crown for a young actress to wear, and Diane spent the early 1980s proving she was far more than a pretty face. She played a troubled teen in Touched by Love, showed her range alongside Amanda Plummer in Catalani and Little Britches, and even tried her hand at comedy opposite Kenny Rogers in Six Pack. Then came her fearless turn as a punk rock band leader in Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, a role that announced she was willing to take risks most young actresses would never dare touch. Her place in Hollywood was truly cemented by two Francis Ford Coppola films, The Outsiders and Rumble Fish, where she stood shoulder to shoulder with future stars like Tom Cruise and Rob Lowe. But fame is rarely a straight line. When Streets of Fire and The Cotton Club underperformed, Diane stepped back from acting altogether and returned to Georgia to reconnect with her mother. It was a season of healing rather than ambition. As she later put it, she simply wanted her mother back. When she was finally ready to return, films like The Big Town and Lady Beware marked the quiet start of her comeback. And one role in particular, in the most unexpected format imaginable, was about to change everything. Lonesome Dove.
I thought you'd want to stay clear of such doings for a while. See, that's natural. See, you best take your time. You best take your time.
It doesn't matter how much time.
The role that reignited Diane Lane's career did not come from a blockbuster film. It came from television. In 1989, she starred in the celebrated miniseries Lonesome Dove, and her performance earned her an Emmy nomination while reminding the industry exactly what she was capable of. Around the same time, she came agonizingly close to landing the lead in Pretty Woman, a part that would go on to turn a different actress into a household name. But Diane refused to let the near miss slow her down. She kept stacking up acclaim, playing Paulette Goddard in Chaplin, and drawing praise in films like My New Gun. By the late 1990s, she was operating at full strength again. Her 1999 role in A Walk on the Moon, where she played a woman torn between love and duty, opposite Viggo Mortensen and Liev Schreiber, was described by critics as meltingly effective. It was the kind of performance that does more than entertain. It signaled that Diane was no longer simply making a comeback. She was reclaiming her place at the very center of Hollywood, and the industry was about to acknowledge it in a way that fame and box office never could. Spirit Awards. That performance in A Walk on the Moon did more than win over audiences. It earned Diane a nomination for Best Female Lead at the Independent Spirit Awards, the kind of recognition that comes from peers who value substance over star wattage. For an actress who had spent years being defined by her looks and her famous comparisons, it was a meaningful shift. The industry was finally beginning to see her as a serious, dramatic talent, rather than a beautiful face that simply photographed well. It was a quiet but important pivot. The roles Diane chased now were the ones that asked more of her, the ones built around emotional complexity rather than glamour. She wanted parts that would stretch her, characters with secrets and contradictions, and real interior lives. For an actress who had once been handed an identity before she was old enough to shape her own, choosing difficult material was its own kind of statement. So, what was the role that finally silenced any remaining doubts about who Diane Lane really was? Unfaithful Diane Lane's early 2000s were a masterclass in versatility. In 2000, she brought warmth and quiet strength as the emotional anchor to Mark Wahlberg's character in The Perfect Storm, then switched gears entirely to play a loving, talkative mother in My Dog Skip. She took on a tense psychological thriller in The Glass House and a heartwarming baseball drama in Hardball, making each one feel grounded and completely real. But 2002 changed everything. In Unfaithful, Diane played a suburban housewife swept up in a passionate and ultimately destructive affair, and her raw, fearless performance earned her an Academy Award nomination. Critics were stunned. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly called her work a revelation. She kept the momentum going with Under the Tuscan Sun, playing a woman rebuilding her life from the ground up, which brought yet another Golden Globe nomination. Over the following years, she moved fluidly between genres, appearing in Must Love Dogs and Hollywoodland, and reuniting with Richard Gere for Nights in Rodanthe. She even considered stepping away from acting altogether, but after a 2-year break, she found fresh inspiration in Secretariat, pouring strength into the determined Penny Chenery. In 2011, she drew praise for HBO's Cinema Verite, and the next year, she lent her voice to the documentary Half the Sky, using her platform to advocate for women's rights around the world. She was no longer just a star. She had become a force. But just when audiences thought they finally had her figured out, Diane stepped into a universe nobody ever expected to find her in. Man of Steel. After decades of dramatic roles, Diane stepped into an entirely new universe. She joined Zack Snyder's Man of Steel as Martha Kent, the warm-hearted human mother of Superman. Snyder praised the way she captured the wisdom and wonder of a woman raising a child with powers beyond anything she could imagine. Audiences connected with her instantly, and her version of Martha Kent became one of the more beloved figures in the DC cinematic universe. She returned to the role in Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and again in Justice League, anchoring some of the franchise's most emotional moments. For a generation of younger viewers who had never seen The Outsiders or Unfaithful, this was their introduction to Diane Lane, and she made it count. It proved she could bring the very same depth to a comic book blockbuster that she brought to an intimate character study. But not every ambitious project she signed on for would actually make it to the screen. Hillary, one of Diane's boldest planned roles, never aired at all. She was set to play Hillary Clinton in an NBC miniseries titled Hillary, but the project sparked controversy and was canceled before it ever reached audiences. Rather than dwell on the disappointment, Diane simply moved forward, exactly as she had done so many times before. She starred in the thriller Every Secret Thing in 2015 and lent her voice to Pixar's hit Inside Out that same year. She joined Bryan Cranston and Helen Mirren in Trumbo, earning a Screen Actors Guild nomination for Best Ensemble Cast. In 2017, she returned as Martha Kent in Justice League, while also appearing in Paris Can Wait and Mark Felt, The Man Who Brought Down the White House. Her television work flourished, too, with memorable turns in The Romanoffs and House of Cards. The momentum carried into 2020 when she captivated audiences alongside Kevin Costner in Let Him Go. She reunited with Meryl Streep in Extrapolations, her work in Feud. Capote vs. the Swans earned her a Primetime Emmy nomination, and she returned to the world of Inside Out by voicing a role in the sequel. Decade after decade, Diane kept finding new ways to shine. But it was never her filmography that fueled the gossip and the headlines. It was her love life. So how many of those famous romances were actually real? Rumors of love affair. For all her achievements on screen, Diane Lane has spent much of her career fielding questions about what happened off it. The first name often tied to hers belongs to Emilio Estevez. Back in the 1980s, when both were young stars riding the wave of a new Hollywood generation, the two were romantically linked, and the story goes that the sparks between them were impossible to miss. It had all the makings of a perfect Hollywood love story. Two attractive rising talents falling for each other in the bright glare of early fame. Like so many Tinseltown romances, though, it did not last. What set theirs apart was how it ended. Instead of bitterness or scandal, Diane and Emilio reportedly parted on warm terms and stayed friends, proving that not every young romance has to collapse into wreckage. It was the first chapter in a long and recurring pattern, one in which Diane's on-screen partners were so often rumored to be her off-screen loves. And no co-star would fuel that speculation more intensely than the man she played a crumbling marriage opposite. Richard Gere. No on-screen pairing fueled more speculation than Diane Lane and Richard Gere. In 2002, the two lit up the screen in Unfaithful, playing a married couple whose lives collapse under the weight of betrayal. Their chemistry was so electric that rumors of a real romance behind the scenes began circulating almost immediately. What many fans did not realize was that this was not the first time they had worked together. Nearly 2 decades earlier, in 1984, they had starred side by side in The Cotton Club, a film set in the Jazz Age. That early connection quietly laid the groundwork for the deeper understanding they would bring to Unfaithful years later. By the time they reunited, their working relationship had matured into one built on genuine respect and mutual admiration. Diane, for her part, was always clear that whatever audiences thought they saw, the relationship was strictly professional. The tension that crackled on screen was the product of two seasoned actors who knew each other's rhythms, not a hidden affair. They would even reunite once more for Nights in Rodanthe, a partnership that endured precisely because it never crossed the line that fans kept imagining. But Gere was not the only leading man who hinted there was something real lingering beneath the performance. Matthew McConaughey. In 2019, Diane teamed up with Matthew McConaughey for the thriller Serenity, and their on-screen chemistry was charged with tension and mystery. Off-screen, there was an unexpected wrinkle. During filming, McConaughey confessed that he had nursed a childhood crush on Diane years before the two of them ever shared a set. It was a charming admission that added a nostalgic layer to their scenes together. In the film, the two played former lovers crossing paths under strange and complicated circumstances, and McConaughey's real-life confession gave their performances an extra spark of familiarity. You could feel the history between them, even if much of that history was imagined. As always, Diane was quick to clarify that the relationship stayed entirely professional, rooted in nothing more than respect and admiration for each other's craft. Still, the playful revelation made the collaboration feel like one of those rare moments where real life sneaks a little magic into the make-believe. Years before Serenity, though, another co-star had set tongues wagging on the very project that revived her career. Robert Duvall. The 1989 miniseries that revived Diane's career also generated its own share of romance rumors. In Lonesome Dove, she played Lorena Wood, a tough and determined woman, opposite Robert Duvall's charming ex-Texas Ranger, Augustus Gus McCrae. Their on-screen chemistry was so convincing that whispers of an off-screen romance followed almost instantly. Diane shut those rumors down just as quickly, insisting again and again that the bond was built on mutual respect and professionalism. What truly connected her and Duvall was a shared determination to do justice to the beloved novel the series was based on. That dedication, far more than any imagined romance, is what made their performances feel so authentic and helped turn Lonesome Dove into an enduring classic. It was a recurring theme throughout Diane's career. The closer the chemistry looked, the louder the rumors grew, and the more firmly she pushed back against them. But not every rumor was only a rumor. Some of these connections were entirely, undeniably real. Christopher Atkins. Not every connection Diane made was purely professional. Back in 1983, while filming The Outsiders, she crossed paths with Christopher Atkins, the very same friend who had once flown with her to Los Angeles as a teenager. Though Atkins had a smaller role in the film, their time together on set reportedly grew into a real romance. Diane has looked back on those days with genuine fondness, remembering the young love they shared. In the movie, she played Cherry Valance, a girl who forms an unexpected bond with Ponyboy Curtis, while Atkins worked in the background. Their relationship did not last, but Diane still recalls it warmly, describing it as a sweet and simple chapter at the very start of her Hollywood journey. There was no drama in how it ended, no bitterness left behind, just the fond memory of a first connection made before fame had fully arrived. And remarkably, that very same film would spark a second romance, this time with a co-star whose name would soon be everywhere. Hannah Dillon. The Outsiders gave Diane more than one memorable connection. The film introduced one of the most iconic on-screen pairings of the 1980s, with Matt Dillon playing the tough, rebellious Dallas Winston opposite Diane's sharp, principled Cherry Valance. Their chemistry was electric, adding a charged undercurrent to the film's story of class conflict and troubled youth. That connection did not end when the cameras stopped rolling. Behind the scenes, their professional bond reportedly blossomed into a brief romance. For Diane, who was only just beginning her career, the relationship came with new and overwhelming challenges, including a swirl of rumors and public attention at a remarkably young age. She has been open about how the two eventually parted on good terms. It was a brief but meaningful chapter, one that added a layer of realness to her experience on The Outsiders and to her journey through fame and young adulthood. Some of her rumored romances, though, came with a twist nobody saw coming. Danny Cannon. Some of Diane's rumored romances unfolded in the most unexpected places. In the 1995 sci-fi action film Judge Dredd, she played the tough and determined Judge Hershey, matching Sylvester Stallone's iconic title character scene for scene. On screen, all the tension ran between her and Stallone. Behind the scenes, however, the real story was completely different. It was not her famous co-star who caught Diane's attention. It was the film's director, Danny Cannon. The two reportedly shared a brief romance during production, a connection that stayed largely under the radar at the time. Though their relationship was short-lived, they remained on good terms afterward, even appearing together at a few public events. It was a small but intriguing chapter that showed how Diane's personal and professional worlds occasionally overlapped in ways nobody watching the finished film would ever have guessed. There was, however, one final name, and this connection would quietly span more than 15 years. Nicolas Cage. The final name in Diane's long list of rumored romances belongs to Nicolas Cage. The two first met in 1984 on the set of Rumble Fish, where Cage, still early in his career, had the advantage of working with his uncle, the legendary director Francis Ford Coppola. Diane was on the rise herself, and during filming, the two formed a friendship that quietly deepened over the years. Fast forward to 2000, and they reunited on the set of The Family Man. This time, their connection reportedly evolved into a brief romance. Yet by Diane's own account, the relationship never once interfered with their work or their long-standing friendship. It was a fitting final entry in a career full of connections that blurred the line between performance and real life. Now, looking back from her late 50s, Diane Lane reflects on it all with candor and grace. She has never shied away from the rumors that have trailed her for decades, through 2 marriages and the raising of a daughter. Her life off-screen has been every bit as captivating as the one she built in front of the camera. Whether new whispers ever surface about her love life is anyone's guess. But one thing has never wavered through all of it: her talent. And her grace, beauty, and brilliance will keep captivating audiences, just as they always have. So, which of Diane Lane's rumored romances surprised you the most? And do you think her refusal to feed the speculation over the years made her more fascinating rather than less? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.